So in today's tier list, the fairy type, I am going to also be including all of the Pokemon that got retconned into being a secondary fairy type when the fairy typing was introduced in Generation 6. And the reason that I'm doing this is partly because there aren't that many primary fairy types. There were a handful, even including ones that, were retconned in a later generation. But it felt kind of weird to not have any representation in the first 5 gens outside of Togekiss and Clefable. So I wanted to include some other options, but any Pokemon that was introduced in Generation 6 or later that is a secondary fairy type will be considered in its primary typing video. And in hindsight, I recognize that I probably should have done fairy type sooner just so that I could make this ruling and distinction clear, but here we are. It is what it is. So without any further ado, let's jump into the fairy typing. So when the fairy typing was introduced, the Pokemon Company had to make a handful of kind of arbitrary decisions in terms of which Pokemon would be now considered part of this new fairy typing, because they didn't want to only introduce new ones, they wanted to include some old fan favorites as being part of this new and exciting typing. And as for the Pokemon they picked, I can honestly agree with most of the decisions that they made. I think that Pokemon that sort of needed a little bit of extra personality added onto them got it in the form of this new typing. And the perfect example of that is Clefable. Obviously, Clefairy has the word fairy in its name, so it was a natural choice. But in hindsight, this is the sort of Pokemon that looks like it was designed to be a fairy type in the first place. Like, just looking at it, it's just like, yeah, that absolutely is a fairy. So just because of like how perfect it is for a typing that didn't even exist yet, I've got to give it an A tier. It's just it just worked so well in their favor that I've got to give them credit for that. And like, we all know that like Clefairy was supposed to be the mascot, and I have feelings about that, but I will get into my personal opinion on the Pokemon mascot when we get to certain particular type tier lists. But I like Clefairy. I've always appreciated it, and I think that the fairy typing is just so well suited to it. Wigglytuff, the whole Jigglypuff line, super iconic. Shout out to Hungrybox and Smash, and like Jigglypuff in the anime, in third-party games like Smash Bros. And Pokemon Unite, and even in the Pokemon games themselves, Jigglypuff and Wigglytuff are just so iconic and memorable to me. And like, they do have Jigglypuff especially has an incredibly simple design. It's just a circle with arms and legs and like a little hair tuft, but it's just so iconic to me in the way that it is and all of the peripheral media that it's appeared in, that I've got to put Wigglytuff in S tier. Love this Pokemon, love this whole line. Igglybuff, very cute. Jigglypuff, perfect. 10 out of 10, 11 out of 10 design. And Wigglytuff, I think, is a very good change in the design language of the Pokemon so that they feel connected, but it's not just like a bigger circle. So really great all around. Very easy S tier for me. Mr. Mime, I feel the same way about Mr. Mime that I feel about Jinx, but like, honestly, a little bit worse. That's just a man. That's just a whole adult man. That is not a Pokemon. That is a whole adult man. It's weird. Why is this a Pokemon? And like, humanoid Pokemon designs, we're gonna get into it a little bit later on in this video even, but like, humanoid Pokemon designs are just creepy. Like, Mr. Mime is just a man. It's a D tier. I'm almost tempted to make an F tier just so that Mr. Mime can languish in its own awfulness, but I'm just going to keep it D tier for now. I find it incredibly unsettling, and guess what? I'm not going to have very kind things to say about it during the regional forums video either. Azumarill. I really like Azumarill. I love using it in game because it is such an absolute beast with huge power, but strictly based on design, I can see it being a fairy type. I think it works. It doesn't like offend me that they made it a fairy type, but it's fine. Like design wise, it's like a blue mouse rabbit thing, and like it's got a little bit of like aquatic type design to it. It's got some interesting stuff. I love the specific tidbit that Azurill and Meryl have different gender ratios. So there's like a 1/3 chance that if you have a female Azurill, that when it evolves, it becomes a male. I think that's just like a fun quirk of the system. It's, you know, it's probably just a development oversight, but the fact that they've kept it in for so long, I don't know, maybe it's intentional. Maybe it's like a reference to the fact that a lot of animals in the wild can like be hermaphroditic, can like change gender depending on like the biological needs of the species at the time. So maybe it's an intentional reference to that, but kind of a weird line to include it in because I don't think any mammals do that. I think it's mostly like fish and lizards that do that kind of thing. But anyways, all that being said, Azumarill, I like it. I love using it, but as a design, it's kind of bland to me. Granbull, Snubbull, very cute. Granbull, kind of cursed. Like, why is its jaw like why are its like big bulky fangs like covered in skin and fur? I find it kind of unsettling. Not nearly as badly as Mr. Mime, but you know, as a fairy type, I think fairy type makes perfect sense for Snubbull and Granbull. I do want to say that. Not quite as like obviously good as Clefairy and Clefable, but like, yeah, I feel like Granbull, in a sense, was always intended to be a fairy type. Like it being normal type just doesn't suit the line very well. So yeah, big props to them changing it to fairy type. Gardevoir. Gardevoir is a very humanoid design, and there's no getting around it. We all know, but I will give it a lot of credit because insofar as it is a very humanoid design, it's not just like I look at it and it's like that's a person. Like I look at it and it's like that's like some sort of strange fairy creature. Like it is humanoid, but it doesn't look human to me. Mr. Mime looks human to me, and that's weird. Gardevoir just looks like humanoid, and because of that, I can rate it more highly. I like the whole line, and Gallade obviously not being a fairy type isn't considered in this video. We'll get to it when we get to it. But yeah, Gardevoir, Ralts, Curlia, I think it's a great line. Very iconic to Gen 3. And I'm kind of 50-50 on whether I think it made sense to make it a fairy type, because like I don't think it really needed it, but it makes enough sense. Like I look at it and it's just like, yeah, I could see that being a fairy. It makes sense to me now that it is a fairy. So I'm gonna put it B tier above Azumarill. I find humanoid Pokemon a little bit unsettling in the first place, but I can at least look at Gardevoir and be like, it's not a human. I look at it and I don't see like an adult human. I look at it and I see like a fairy mystical creature type of thing. And so it's not as bad as Mr. Mime. Mawile, I love the design, honestly. Like, I wished for the longest time that this thing was useful in the games, so that I could use it, because I love the way that it looks. Like, I love the huge evil jaw on the back of its head. It's so interesting. It's so fun. And, like, the dualism between the like, evil maw and just, like, the little guy attached to it. Very, very fun dynamic. It's kind of like Girafarig, if Girafarig were a good design. Yeah, I'd put it A tier. I'd put it above Clefable, and like fairy typing and obviously Mega Evolution, but fairy typing was the thing that it needed. Like I look at it and just like, yeah, Steel Fairy. Absolutely. I understand that 100%. Fairy typing was what Mawile needed. Gotta love it. And Togekiss. I love Togepi. I find Togetic kind of weird, and I like Togekiss's design because I like the line, but Togetic is kind of like a weird janky design. Like its neck is too long for its body, and it just looks like super lopsided and strange to me. And Togekiss, I don't see as being like a logical through line for the evolution. I like each of the creatures individually is fine, and I especially like Togepi. I think Togepi is a really good design, but I feel like I don't necessarily see all of them as being like related evolutions to each other. They look very distinct to me. Like I don't always 100% see the connection between them. And so for that reason, I like the individual designs, but I don't see them together. I'm going to put it like B tier for me. Whimsicott. Whimsicott is great. Really love it. Um uh Cottony is exceptionally cute, and then Whimsicott, it's a sheep dandelion cotton ball sort of thing. It's cool. There's a lot to like about it. Perfect sense for it to be fairy type for me. The fact that it's this very like floaty prankster for its ability, which we're not getting to battle, but like fairy pranksters, that's like a whole thing in lore. So the fact that like it was known for its prankster ability and then it got the fairy typing, like, yeah, that makes sense. I love that. A tier for me. I'd put it below Mawile, but yeah, very, very strong design, very strong concept. Makes perfect sense that they added fairy typing to it. And now we are getting into the Pokemon that were actually specifically designed with the fairy typing in mind. And we are starting off with a flower. Florges really should have been a secondary grass type. Like it should have been a secondary grass type. Like I get that like the creature itself is like the fairy inside it, and it's just got like the flower and the plants growing around it. It's supposed to sort of like mimic like flowers and grass but not actually be it. But it should really be a grass type, and if it were grass type, it would probably be like B tier, maybe very, very low A tier. But like it should really be a grass type. Game Freak, make it happen. Game Freak, give Florges the grass typing that it deserves. Aromatisse. I've got a strong connection to Aromatisse. I used it in my first playthrough of X and Y. I like it's got a lot of like confused design elements, but they kind of merge together really well. Like the sort of like Plague Doctor aesthetic, while also being this like very like fabulous, glamorous fashion model type of design. I think it works. It's kind of a confused, mixed design, but I feel like the design elements come together in a way that like it works for me. I think it's nice. I enjoy it. I'll call it a B tier for me. Slurpuff I love. I love its face, its personality. Swirlix I think is very cute. If you're aware of the whole like, is this Pokemon a dog or a lizard meme? I would say that Aromatisse is a lizard and Slurpuff is a dog, in the best way possible. Like I love how goopy it is, and my biggest sadness in life is that when I have like made agreements with my sister primarily to get different versions of the game, she has always gotten the one with Slurpuff in it, and I have always gotten the one with Aromatisse in it. So like I have that personal connection to Aromatisse, but I love Slurpuff so much. I think it's such a fun and goofy design. I think it's so cute. I love how like jiggly and goopy it is. It's an S tier for me. Gotta love it. And straight into another really strong design. Sylveon gotta be S tier. Sylveon says trans rights. Very cool, very fun. As an evolution, it was the first evolution for 2 generations, and it was a fairy type because whenever they're introducing new gimmicks, they always give it to like the really popular mascot Pokemon. And so like fairy type evolution, perfectly reasonable, perfectly logical. And I think Sylveon, it looks like an evolution, but it also looks like a fairy type. I like the ribbons. I know that a lot of people don't like the ribbony aspect to it because like they are made of like skin and flesh and stuff, but I think the ribbons work. As a fairy type design, I think there's a lot to like about Sylveon. Xerneas is overdesigned. It's not as overtly dumb and overdesigned as Yveltal, but it's got too much going on for me. Like it's a deer that is an X with its antlers, and it's got like all of the different like colors in its antlers and the weird like blue and black coloration in its body. It's over designed to me. Very very straightforwardly, like it's not terrible, but I don't like looking at it. I think box legendaries got really really bad kind of starting in generation 5. We're on that edge of over designedness, but definitely generation 6 onwards, I'm not a fan of box legendaries. Just as a rule, I think they're over designed and kind of dumb. Comfey also should be a grass type, but I'll give more credit to it than I would to Florges, just because you can tell that it's like a little guy that collects flowers. It is not the flowers itself. Like it's a little guy that has the flower lay that it like keeps with it. So for that reason, and because I think Comfey is much cuter than Florges, I'll put it like middle of B tier. Probably should be grass type, but it has a greater delineation between the creature and the flowers that it carries with it. So I'm not going to be as harsh on it as I am on Florges. Plus, like I said, I think the little guy in the middle is cute. Alchemy, S tier design. Easy S tier design. Similar reasons to Slurpuff. Like I like that they're dessert Pokemon. Something that I'm learning about myself as I'm making these tier lists is that if you can make a Pokemon into a dessert, or make a dessert into a Pokemon, then I'm gonna like it. But I like the gimmick of how you evolve Alchemy, of how you need to like attach like a mixer to it, like a fruit, or like I think there's like a chocolate one also. I don't know. But that you like attach it to Milcery, and then you use the spinning mechanic in Sword and Shield in order to like mix in the ingredients and evolve it. I think that's such a really fun and interesting gimmick, and the fact that there's like 90 of these things that you can get depending on what ingredient you add and how long you mix it for. Super fun concept, super cute design. I might or might not make a video about Gigantamaxes, so I'll talk about it more if and when that happens. But I also really like its Gigantamax form. Really solid design all around. I love it a lot. Can't say enough good about it. Zacian, also C tier for me. I consider it about the same level of over designedness as Xerneas. I don't like box legendaries. They don't do anything for me. They're designed to look very appealing and very like, ooh, that looks like super strong and super powerful, but it just looks over designed to me. And like it is kind of funny that when it's in its crowned form it's like Knife Dog, but I'm not a fan. I could take it or leave it. And that brings us to Enamorus. Enamorus is a D tier because I hated catching it in Pokemon Legends Arceus. Why? Like, I get that they needed to have like one of the forces of nature in each of the regions, but why did they put it in the Crimson Mirelands in the middle of the swamp? Why was it in the middle of the swamp? It made it such a nightmare to catch. Like, this was the one that I had to like look up a guide online of how other people figured out how to catch it, because I just could not crack this thing my first time playing. It was such a nightmare. And like, I'm not a big fan of the forces of nature designs in general. I also think that it's kind of an ugly design. Like, it's substantially different from like Thundurus and Landorus and Tornadus, but I think it's a downgrade in the way that it is. It just looks ugly to me. And like, I have such a personal vendetta against it. But yeah, I don't have anything kind to say about Enamorus. I'm sorry if you're a fan, but very, very strongly not for me. Don't care for it. But yeah, that's the fairy typing. A lot of really good designs. I love dessert Pokemon is something that I'm learning about myself. And yeah, like I said, a lot of Pokemon weren't designed with the fairy typing in mind, but of the ones that got it, I can look at all of them and say, yeah, that makes perfect sense. Like, you looked like you should have been a fairy type all along, for the most part. I could kind of take and leave Gardevoir, and I could kind of take or leave Azumarill, but everything else is just like, yeah, fairy makes sense for you. Let me know what you think, if you agree or disagree with my placements. Thank you very much for watching if you got this far. If you got this far, go ahead and drop a like and a subscribe if you would be so kind. I know that it's cringe to do a call for action, but if I want to do this long term, then I'm going to need an audience to be able to motivate and encourage me, and to potentially be able to make millions of dollars and become the next PewDiePie. So yeah, like and subscribe if you liked and want to see more. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful day.